Fortune and Butter returned home, but Fortune thought for a second and he asked Butter if he wanted to move out since their house was half of a mess. Butter replied, "Why not?" So they both moved out. When Fortune and Butter began walking together, Butter realized that they should bring some of their stuff so they can use their sleeping bags to sleep if they're tired during the walk. Butter and Fortune got to their soon-to-be old house, so then they picked up their bags and they were ready to go. Once they started walking, they got a bit tired, so they put down their bags and they quickly had a small break. Once Butter and Fortune started to walk again, they picked up their bags and they walked together. When they moved even farther away, they were extremely hungry for their kibble in their bags. Once Butter and Fortune found a perfect spot to have a picnic, they quickly put their bags down and they began to unpack everything. Once they began unpacking the first bag that they found, they saw some sort of bread to eat. Fortune started to unpack another one. And Butter was watching him since he didn't know how to quickly open a packaged picnic bag. Once Fortune began to unpackage the last one, he found some fruits and some containers filled with milk. Once they both started eating, they both enjoyed their meal together. Once Butter and Fortune finished eating, they noticed that they got lost since things started to look the same. Butter was super scared, but Fortune told Butter that he knew where some type of town or city was, so Fortune showed Butter where it was. Once Fortune and Butter got to the city, they both dropped off their bags at a bag holding station so they could freely walk around and explore the city without having to hold anything. After a while of walking around the city, they went to a store to buy matching shirts, then they were on their way to get their bags at the station. Once Fortune and Butter picked up their bags from the station, they saw that it was beginning to get dark and they needed to find somewhere to lay their tent and sleeping bags. As they began to move towards a neighborhood, they noticed a house with their backyard door open, so Fortune and Butter looked at each other and nodded their heads. Fortune and Butter began to walk toward the house and they turned their heads at each other once again, and both of their faces were shaking in fear, but they still went ahead. Butter and Fortune went into the backyard and Butter leaned on Fortune and shook in fear, but Fortune kept brave. Butter and Fortune was in the backyard, and once they actually got in, they began to hear footsteps from inside, but then they heard the door open. As Butter and Fortune heard the footsteps get even louder and louder, they saw some other kitten come out. Before Butter and Fortune could even attempt to escape, they saw that whoever came out was quite familiar and they realized that it was their cousin who was in the house. Fortune and Butter were welcomed in to play a fun game that their cousin made up for fun. Fortune and Butter began to play the game that was called Follow the Feather, so they had to watch the feather move around, and if they throw the feather, the cats that were watching it had to close their eyes, but if they got tricked and they looked at the feather in the air, then they lost. As they finished playing, Fortune and Butter got a guest bedroom and they slept together happily.